Good evening, everybody, and we will begin in just a few minutes. We still have some people joining us.
Boy, we have a lot of people joining us.
We had about 150 people register for tonight.
I was kidding at a meeting earlier today because usually there's some of these meetings 10 or 15 and I said it's like Hollywood Squares, except when you get a large number of people, when all of a sudden it goes to 100 people, it's
Okay, I just started the YouTube live. I think it's streaming.
We're good to go, Ravina. Just check.
Oh, it works now?
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming good. I can hear everyone.
Awesome.
And I posted it on Facebook.
Perfect. All right. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Nami Santa Clara County monthly general meeting. My name is Ravina Nimbalkar, and I'm the executive director at Nami Santa Clara County. Before we begin, I'm going to give some updates about Nami Santa Clara County, about what's going on. So all our programs have been virtual since shelter in place in March last year. It's almost going to be a year. Our warm line is up and running from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Fridays via phone as well as email. And we also have some after hours for family support, which is available on evenings and weekends. All the support groups are listed on our website and offered over Zoom. The family to family class sorry about that. The YouTube is echoing, so I could hear that. Sorry about that. The family to family classes, the next one is, the current January one is currently going on, and the next one is going to be mid-April. If you need more information, you can call the warm line. The peer-to-peer classes would be end of February. The provider education class, the next class is going to be April 16th. And again, you can get more information about it at the warm line. The next FaithNet training is February 25th at 11 a.m. Our warm line number is 408-453-0400, and you can hit option number 1. And our website is www.namisantaclara.org. I would like to mention that that tonight for the general meeting, we are streaming online on YouTube. So if you do not want to display your picture, you can just remove the picture part and just go in the audio mode. The other announcement I have is on February 15th, we are screening a movie. It's virtual, called Bedlam. It's at 3 p.m. This is a movie that gives you an insight into America's mental health crisis. It is also the first documentary about mental health to be ever featured at the Sundance Festival. And followed by the screening, we will have a panel discussion with former Senator Jim Bell, David Mineta, Allison Murray, and the director and writer and producer of the movie, Dr. Kenneth Rosenberg. Now that I have completed with the updates, I would like to invite Vic Ojakin, co-president of Nami Santa Clara County.
So should I do the award thing also besides the announcement I had to make? Do both things?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, and welcome everybody, by the way, and we have good attendance tonight, which is great. I wanted to let everybody know that it's at this particular meeting, this general meeting, that we usually make an announcement about nominations for our board officers positions. And we have a number of them. I don't think I need to list them off. And by the way, besides being the co-president, I think I'm also joined tonight by Bev Lozoff, who's my co-president. So At this particular meeting each year, we remind people that per our bylaws, that we accept nominations from the floor for anybody who might have an interest in serving on the board. So we're willing to accept nominations. I will let you know that our current group of officers, which have been in place for the last couple of years, maybe the last few years, all have agreed to step up again for another year. So for instance, Deb and I both said that we're willing to be co-presidents for this upcoming year. We usually take a vote in March, and then we announce at the April general meeting who the officers are. So again, if there's an interest in anybody wanting to serve in the board positions, remind me, Kathy or Ravina, people can bring that up now, or they submit something to one of us.
Yeah, they can submit an application.
Yeah. Okay, so that's an announcement about the board meeting. Now I have a more pleasurable thing to do. So it's my honor to recognize our 2020 Community Merit Award winner. This is an award that we give one time each year and announce it typically at this meeting, of a person who we think is an outstanding individual in regards to doing work in the mental health field, and of course in assisting with families and consumers, something that we, Nami, are very much focused on. So what I'm going to do is make a brief, I'm going to read something, which I typically don't like to do. I'm going to do that first, then I'm going to make a personal comment, and then we have a special guest tonight who wants to make a comment, and I noticed that guest is, I can see him in one of the Hollywood squares even. So let me read something to everybody first, and this is about David Mineta, and frankly, I took this from the Momentum for Mental Health website, where David is the president and CEO, and it says, David Mineta's career has roots in Santa Clara County. He earned his master's degree in social work from San Jose State University and a bachelor's degree from the University of California at Berkeley. As a quick aside, where else would you want to earn a bachelor's degree? Not that I graduated from there, as did my mother and my two aunts and my sister and my brother and so on. You get the idea. He worked for 14 years as at the Asian American Recovery Services as deputy director in the Bay Area. And from there, he served in the President Barack Obama administration in the appointed position of deputy director for demand reduction for the Office of National Drug Control Policy. After a 5-year stint, he returned to the Bay Area to become president and CEO of Momentum for Mental Health. And then here's the part, and the reason why I'm reading this. The final sentence on the website says this: he is the recipient of Nami Santa Clara County's 2020 Community Merit Award. So that's already put out on, that's the only particular award that's recognized. So just as a personal comment about Dave, I learned first he replaced or took the position coming on the footsteps of some people that are considered, what do you call them, almost like icons or huge figures, Vonze Thompson and then Paul Taylor after Vonze. So it wasn't a position that he could sort of just waltz into and say, look, here I am. What made it interesting is right after he took that job, and probably somewhere within days of relocating to the Bay Area, I met Dave for the first time at a mental health walk. And I not only met him, but here he is relocating from back east or whatever, back to working in San Jose, and he's at the walk with his whole family, his wife and his 2 children. So that's one of the first things that he did when he started up here. And I'm fortunate enough to have had interacted with him a lot over different things. He is a very active individual that certainly is passionate about mental health and what I work on, suicide prevention. So it's quite an honor for us to honor Dave. Now, before I let you say anything, I noticed we have a guest. I'm wondering if he's on the streets of Sacramento even. Mr. Cortese, Senator Cortese is here. And Dave, I think you wanted to say a couple of words.
Yeah, thank you, Vic, very, very much. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
I am most definitely on the streets of Sacramento. And, you know, I was thinking how poetic in a way. I didn't really set this up exactly by design, but it worked out this way. But as I stand out here in this urban environment out on the edge of town, you know, several blocks from the Capitol, which is barricaded and shut down, I couldn't help but reflect on all of the people over the years who would have been left out on the street were it not for David Mineta. And of course, that legacy goes on and on and on. And it's something that I've been touched to reflect on a lot recently on the cascading effect, the continuing effect, the ripple effect, as some people say, that somebody like David Mineta has that goes way, way beyond anything that we can quantify. And I have one paragraph here, which of course doesn't do justice to the profound work that David Mineta has been doing, but it is a Senate certificate of recognition for David Mineta, President and CEO of Momentum for Health. And it says, congratulations on being selected as Nami Santa Clara County 2020 Community Award recipient. For the past 30 years, you have dedicated your life to improving behavioral health access and services. You have displayed a fierce dedication to empowering vulnerable and underserved community members seeking behavioral health resources. Your passion is unmatched, and we are profoundly grateful for the contributions you have made to Santa Clara County. From the California State Senate, signed by yours truly, Senator Dave Cortese, February 9th, 2021. Thank you, David. On a personal note, well, of course, I'll never get into details. I do want to say, for the benefit of the large audience that is here this evening, celebrating this with you, that I'm one of those people whose life you have touched. My family has been the beneficiary of that. And my extended family has been the beneficiary of that. And I believe generations of my family will be the beneficiary of that going forward. I don't think that can be overstated, and I certainly don't want to understate it tonight. So thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your mentorship. Thank you for your compassion. And thank you for looking out for me. But thank you on behalf of the 40 million people in the state of California for doing the work that you do. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And thank you for allowing me a few minutes of time. I think the certificate was up on the screen. Let me see if I can show the one with the original signature on it here. How's that? I'm not too good at this, but
no,
there you go. It's real. Thank you. And good night.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Dave.
you very much. Let me just say, before I turn it over to you for a minute, Dave, because I didn't get into a lot of the details and it would take too much time to do that. At NAMI, we've interacted with Dave over a whole series of things, including most recently, in the last day or two, talking about housing for people with a mental health condition. So this has been a great and important relationship for NAMI to work with you. And then I get the side benefit. I noticed your father happens to be on tonight, but as important to me, I've gotten the opportunity because Dave's daughter is very interested, teenage daughter, is very interested in mental health too. And she and I participate on a committee, or did when it was pre-COVID, and will again, I'm sure, at some stage. So this isn't he's not just a one-man operation. He's got a whole family involved in things. So it's an honor to recognize you this year. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Vic. I absolutely would. And I would first again like to thank Senator Cortese. I'd like to thank the wonderful duo of the Corteses. I want to thank the Senator and also Trustee Patty Cortese for all they do around behavioral health in the area, and just for their friendship. And Dave, it's nice. It's great that Dad is here as well, because Dave, so often, you and I are the beneficiaries of a legacy of our families working to make things better, life better here in the Valley. And thanks. I appreciate Dad and Denny being here. I appreciate my mom being here, my family being on the call tonight. And again, thanks, Dave, for that. You got me all choked up. I was like I was swallowing hard when you were reading that. That's again, good evening, everybody. I want to thank Nami. Nami's like the brains and the heart of the local mental health community. And when you look for folks who are tireless workers, who are working not for any recognition, but just to get the job done, then you find Nami. And so it is especially humbling to receive the Community Merit Award from such tireless leaders. And I only hope that, whatever I can do matches the heart and spirit of Nami and what Nami does every day in our community. Also, I'd like to also just thank my family. Usually I leave them for the end, and usually it's only like just a clip sentence, and I usually forget something. So I want to do them at the top. And I really appreciate my parents being here, my dad, my stepmom, Denny, my mom. It's great to have the grandparents here. And, it's not often enough that I feel like I am in contact with them, or just, and part of it is just feeling, we're just working, tirelessly to try to improve people's lives here in the Valley around behavioral health. And for that, I want to thank my wife and my kids, because we're at work a lot. I'm at work right now. Again, I want to thank Christine, I want to thank Lauren and Matthew for allowing me and to do this job. There's nothing I've ever done in my life that looks like a singular individual achievement that wasn't because of other people, particularly my family. So again, I just want to thank them. I've hoped that my career, and I still feel really young in my career, although it's been 30 years, could simply be about making things better than when I found them. My family and the communities in which I've grown up have passed this along to me, and now I'd like to live out that same idea every day. The forces of division and destruction are present all around us, and they're very, very powerful. We've seen them at work. It takes much less time and energy to destroy something than it does to build and create. Our behavioral health community is about building, and we do it every day, and we do it all together. When I see folks on this call, I'm reminded of walking, of being in meetings, of advocating, and doing all the work of trying to help our neighbors, our family members, our colleagues, ourselves. So on behalf of the community partners that empower behavioral health every day, I'm talking about all of the other providers, the other behavioral health providers in the county. There are 30 plus agencies every day that do this work. And on behalf of them, I'd like to accept this award. But finally, I would humbly accept this award and this recognition on behalf of our excellent board of directors. I know we have some, I see Jason here tonight. We have wonderful board of directors, 480 heroes that I get to work with every day who have kept services going throughout the pandemic from the very beginning to today. And we've kept the doors open every day for vital, essential services. But most especially to the 4,000 clients and their families with whom we partner. We have the privilege to partner every day to help folks enjoy one more day of recovery, one more day of doing better, one more day of feeling better. So again, on behalf of everyone, all of those folks, I'd like to say thank you all to Nami. This is a wonderful, wonderful honor, and I am so humbled to accept this.
I was going to say, at this point, we'd hand you the plaque and ask for a standing ovation, but I haven't figured out how to do that on Zoom. So thank you, Dave, and you're well deserving. We're blessed to have you in this community.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Turn it back over to you, Ravina.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Vic, and thank you, Senator Dave Curtisi. I now would like to invite Kyle Galimba, our walk and events manager, to introduce our speaker for tonight. Over to you, Kyle.
Thank you, Ravina. So I'm here to introduce Eric Kussin. He is a 19-year pro sports executive who has worked at the NBA League office with such teams as Chicago Sky, Chicago Bulls, Phoenix Suns, New Jersey Devils, and Florida Panthers. Eric holds a bachelor's degree from Cornell's Dyson School of Business, Marketing, and Management, and keeps his foot in sports, consulting for professional sports teams and leagues. His global alliance, the Global Mental Health Alliance, composed of athletes and celebrities, along with media members, expert practitioners, advocates, and everyday heroes who have come together to make talking about mental health a common topic for 5 out of 5 of us. He will discuss how mental health is a topic for 5 in 5 and stretches way beyond the 1 in 5 statistic that is often in the focus. The mission of Same Here Global mental health movement is to normalize society's perception of mental health and make it part of our everyday conversation. He will also discuss his original concept for We're All a Little Crazy. He is committed to changing society's perception of mental health, making it part of our everyday conversation where people can say, same here, I've been through some or many of life's challenges as well. Please welcome Eric Hewson.
Sorry about that. I was saying thank you, Kyle. Well, let me make sure I'm doing this correctly. And as I'm doing this, I was sharing with Ravina and Marit that I'm in a hotel room all the way out east in Long Island right now at a school that we were presenting at this morning. So if I seem like I'm in weird lighting right now, that's the reason why. Okay. Do you guys see what's on my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, so let me go to the slideshow version of this. See it now? Works? Thumbs up?
Yes.
It's clear.
Okay. I want to make sure. All right, so let me begin by first off congratulating Dave. That's an awesome honor. It's really cool, and this is my first opportunity working with the Santa Clara division, specifically within Nami. And before even getting into the presentation itself, what I want to share is that, you know, I think very highly of Ravina and Marie and Kyle for inviting me to come be a part of this. I'm in the space of mental health, in the amount of time that this topic has been discussed, right? And getting discussed even more so now. I'm a newbie when it comes to this stuff. I've only been doing it for 3 years. And I really appreciate their invitation to be a part of this and the openness to share different ideas. And I think that goes a long way when we're able to cross-pollinate across multiple organizations. I think that's how we grow as a community, is to continue to talk about this topic from so many different angles. And so I'm going to start with this one. By the way, Kyle, let me know if you like the way the logo came out, that it shows up clearly there. So the next 45 to an hour or so, my goal right now is to, one, entertain you, two, to try and challenge you intellectually in a way that's fun, not in a way that's going to make you, defensive in any way. And it's coming from the angle of someone who had a lived experience, which I'll certainly dive in and share my story, and then looking at this space of mental health and saying, okay, why didn't this resonate with me before something happened to me? So I wanted to at least set the stage and set the table for that before diving in. So you look at this, opening slide here, and you see pictures of people from all around the world or from all different networks within societies. There's sports, there's schools, there's universities, there's corporations here, and they're making this sign that's part of our organization's logo. I'm going to dive deeper into that a little bit later on. It's an American Sign Language sign that says "Same here." So you're making the motion almost like you would hang loose, but you're doing it perpendicularly. So "Same here" in sign language is like, we're the same. So I'm pointing my thumb at myself and pinky out at you. And so you see this picture, and it's really nice, and you see firefighters, and you see actually folks in the mental health community in the picture on the bottom, and athletes from South Carolina in the middle, and members of the Cleveland Cavaliers office in the top left. And they're all making this sign, and it seems fine and dandy. Like, when it comes to this topic of mental health, we're all in this together. And now here's the challenge. Unfortunately, that's not the way that our society looks at mental health. It doesn't feel like it's a all of us in it together type of conversation. And coming especially from a sports background, from the sports world, when I dive a little bit deeper into kind of career-wise how I ended up getting here, we're so used to this idea of, when we make it to the playoffs, all in it for one, all one goal. You guys have all heard the different playoff taglines that come in when we talk about sports. And so I was trying to figure out, why is it that we don't feel that way as a society, that it's not all of us in it together, that we're not all working on this as one. And so I've done these presentations now, with different groups from schools to offices. I'll get into the different buckets in a second. But in particular, when I do these presentations with mental health professionals, so I mentioned that this group below, this was 500 mental health professionals from Long Island out here in New York. First time I ever asked this question, and I've done it 41 times since, where the room was just mental health professionals. And the question was, when it comes to mental health, what terms come to mind that relate to mental health? And I set them up in groups, and I give an opportunity to write on the big notepads. And on the left side, you could write all the positive word associations that come up in green when you think of the term mental health. And in right, I want you to write all the negative word associations that come to mind when you think of the term mental health in red. So now, after doing that for 41 different times now, and I'll keep updating that each time I do what that number is, I take the sheets, I take pictures of them when we're done, and I count them up. And the top 20 plus words that have come up, top 20, have all been negative. So I'll read some of these, and they're hurtful to me because I'm in this space also, right? But failure, lunatic, alone, mental hospital, crazy, weirdo. These are scary terms. And what shakes me when I hear that, and that's the feedback, and it's coming specifically from mental health professionals, they're being given the option to give me answers in both columns. They're usually able to go to that column in the right. We write from left to right, yet they go to the column to the right first because it's the easiest for them to come up with the word associations, and these are the ones that come up most often. Now, the term mental illness isn't up there. The term depression isn't up there. The term anxiety isn't up there. The term mental health is up there. And think of that shift. If we thought of the term physical health, if we go to a magazine rack at an airport and we see a magazine about physical health, it's usually about six-pack abs, bigger shoulders, better sex in 15 days, right? It's all these things that are these positives. And yet here we have this term, physical health, but mental health. And look at the word associations that come up. So how did that develop? Why is there this feeling of looking at health through a different lens, despite the fact that there's a different word in front of it? And so this is kind of the path right here of my career. And you see that crash that happened. I'll get into the details of what that crash was, and then kind of this path that I went on from there. And I'm a big believer that the challenges that we go through in our life and the difficult things that we face, as awful as they are when we go through them, and it's not like we go through them, we're done. I know we continue to go through them, but there's peaks and valleys of how difficult they are, that sometimes when those valleys are as low as they possibly could be, there's opportunities for us to be able to take what we learned from those lows to be able to do something pretty special with them. And I think was fortunate enough to go through a miserable period in my life that led towards an opportunity like that. And so before diving into the story, what I wanted to do was at least give a little bit of background that in talking about mental health in a slightly different way than how I had seen it when I went through it, what started to happen was we started to get reached out to by different segments, different populations, first in the US, but then beyond. So it started with schools, colleges, mostly sports groups and athletic departments at these colleges. So from Cornell on the east to USC by you guys on the west. And then continuing to talk about it that way. And I don't have a budget for advertising or to put a brand out there. It was through word of mouth, essentially, and putting stuff on social media about the key learnings that we had taken away. We started to develop different programming in these 4 or 5 main areas of society. So, okay, one was colleges and universities. That was the previous one. Then what you see on the right, I'll go from right to left. First was schools, and we had schools K through 12 starting to reach out. Then it was offices. Then it was mostly corporate offices. Then it was servicemen and women and first responders. And then it became sports teams and leagues. And in fact, the group that connected Ravina and Marie and Kyle and I was the Golden State Warriors. And so, it warms my heart a little bit in a way that sports was a connector there. But breaking down how we can have programming in each of these areas kind of became, it wasn't something that we had planned from the beginning. It was where the influx of all of the requests for, we want programming, how can we do this, came from. And I think that breakup there is important for us to understand that, like, look at how many different segments of society are even at a place where I think all of us would agree, not everyone's asking for help, not everyone's asking for programming, but to even see this is good music to our ears that folks are being proactive. So, instead of me talking the whole time, I want to ask anyone to unmute yourselves. You could answer this question: is you see celebrities who are listed up here, and probably some of the most prominent celebrities, maybe I don't have Lady Gaga up there and some others, but some of the more prominent celebrities when it comes to mental health, when we hear the term mental health and their name associated with it. So you could unmute yourself if you want to chime in here, is to name one of the celebrities that are up here and give me what you know about their mental health. What has the media told us? What is their social media that they've put out there told us about where they're at with their mental health?
I could chime in real quick, just because I'm really happy you put up Billie Eilish there. She's one of my favorites. I think she's like a modern prodigy personally. But so what she did, which I thought was really cool, was to protest or like kind of make a stance on like body image things. She made a very big effort to only wear baggy clothes until recently. And she just came out talking about just the different mental health related issues coming with body image. And I thought that was really cool.
Okay, so body image, the way that we perceive ourselves, maybe certain disorder, eating disorder, that results from that. Awesome, thanks, Kyle. Who else up there? And I'll fill in after if we go through, but who else wants to chime in here?
I'll say something.
Yeah.
Saying yes to yourself when the rest of society is saying no.
Okay, awesome. And you're saying it for all of them, not any one in particular, John.
This goes to everybody in society that tries to lead a good life.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Again, any mental health word association, what comes to mind when you see an individual that's up here?
Well, I'll say the picture up in the far left-hand corner, that's Kevin Love. and he's spoken about how he's managed his own mental health condition. He's been very open about it.
Okay. And what Vic, do you know what that condition is from what he shared?
I forget now. I think he has bipolar.
So he's anxiety and then panic attacks was his thing with what happened to him during the game on the basketball court. So thank you for that one. So how he's managing his panic attacks and his anxiety. Let's do one other person, and then I'll run through the whole list kind of collectively. Anyone else recognize anyone and what's been talked about in the media with them?
Sorry. Hi, my name is Ori, and I'm looking at Kanye West, and on the bottom left.
Yep.
And what comes up for me is like bipolar, and some kind of headlines and stories about him being on and off meds.
Thank you. That's awesome. And I heard one woman I thought try and chime in there, so I want to make sure she's got a chance here.
Hi, this is Nancy Gittleman. I know Kate Spade, the middle top blue shirt, maybe she committed suicide.
Yep.
I forgot what her issue was. I'm guessing it was bipolar.
Okay.
I don't know, depression or bipolar, something. It surprised me because.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everyone who responded. So I'm going to run through this list, and I'm going to give you the answers that I guess most frequently when I ask that question, which mirrored a lot of your answers, but I'll go through each of them, which is Kevin Love, anxiety, panic attack, Demi Lovato, depression, as Nancy said, Kate Spade, suicide, Carson Daly, anxiety, Billie Eilish, Kyle nailed it, eating disorder and depression as well, Kanye West, bipolar, Avicii is probably the one that most don't recognize on here. He was the big time DJ, suicide, Dak Prescott, depression, spoke about most during the pandemic, Delonte West, bipolar, Bieber, depression, okay? Common thread there, disorder. Now, I want you to think about it in the context of we're a group of people here together that talk about mental health all the time. We understand how disorder plays into the whole picture. But when our masses of people out there, our society, our community, they're being educated on what mental health is, and they're not coming to sessions, they're not coming to forums like this, the way that they are getting their education on mental health is very much from what they're reading on Twitter, what they're seeing on Instagram in terms of pictures, what they're reading in a Players Tribune article or a Sports Illustrated article or an Us Weekly article. And so we're hearing about a disorder and a label. Oftentimes we're hearing, I heard someone mention before with Kanye West, he's on his meds, he's off his meds. So we're hearing about erratic behaviors, unfair comments like Kanye West, oh, he's crazy to be running for president. It's because he's bipolar, okay? But we know nothing, very little. If it's not nothing, then it's very little. And I didn't hear many say anything about it, of what led to, what's the background of, what went on in their life. Very little. From a vulnerability standpoint, there's not much of that shared. So start to think of that when we start to create this narrative of, okay, you've got these group of people like us who we talk about this stuff a lot. You've got another group of people that don't talk about this, and where are they getting the messages from? Where are they learning about this topic of mental health? Okay, I'll ask you all to unmute yourself. This one, I think we'll bring back memory road here, go down memory lane. When it comes to mental health, I'll go to the 80s, 90s, 2000s, okay? I started getting in school in the 80s, was born in 79, so I can't go further back than that and confirm this, but okay, when we were in school, what were we taught depression means? One word.
I wasn't.
You weren't taught? Okay. That's a good,
wasn't taught about depression.
Okay. For anyone where they even touched on the topic in school, what word association came with depression?
Sad.
Sadness. Thank you. What word association, if you weren't in Vic's school and they touched on it even the slightest bit, what word association came up when it was anxiety?
Scared.
Say it louder.
Scared.
Scared.
Nervous.
Okay.
Nervous.
Nervous. Scared. Okay. Thank you. Who suffers from PTSD?
Soldiers.
Thank you. And then here's the one that's changed, especially being in school today, because they don't only have these, which is a good step. When we were in school, we only had guidance counselors. We didn't have school psychologists. We didn't have social workers. We didn't have PPS, right? All this stuff. So how would you broadly define the kids who were sent to the guidance counselor? What were they?
Problems.
The problem kids, right? The kids who do drugs, the kids who have problems at home, right? This was the picture that we were painted. If you weren't in Vic school where they didn't talk about it at all. If they did talk about it, and by the way, this is coming from the child of two educators, my father being a principal, my mother being a language teacher, and I give them a hard time about this all the time. This is what we were taught in school about what mental health was. It's when you're sad, it's when you're nervous. The really bad thing when you go into your shell is when it happens to soldiers, so don't worry about that. And the bad kids are the ones in school that have to go get help. So I want you to, for a second, you could do it, actually do it along with me. I can't see everyone's face on the video, but you're looking at a plane here. And pretend all of us on this Zoom right now, we're able to take a flight on this plane together. And you could charter it anywhere you want for the next 24 hours. We're away from COVID. There's no such thing as COVID. It could be a tropical destination. It could be a ski resort, whatever you relax with, okay? And then after that 24-hour period, we snap our fingers and we're back here at the Zoom and we're going through this together. So when I said we're going to take an airplane, it's much easier when I'm in a room of people like I was this morning to see the hands raised, but certainly you can raise your hand if you want. I say to everyone in the room, how many of you, when I said airplane and showed this picture without knowing what airline it was, thought of the green plane on the left with the smiley face in the cockpit and the wing waving you on? And I usually get about 75% raise their hand, okay? Then I get how many people thought of the red plane with the fangs coming out and don't come on this plane. We don't want you on here, right? And then you get 25%. I see some people raising their hand right now. Isn't this amazing? It's the exact same object, weighs many tons. We see it in the sky, all of us, every single day. We see it up close when we go to the airport. Yet some of us think of it like the green plane, which is it's a train that has wings that flies in the sky. It gets me to my destination more quickly. I get to recline my seat, eat food, served all the time, go on my Wi-Fi. This is amazing. And then some of us think of a plane and we're like, this is a death trap that could fall out of the sky at any moment. I don't want to go anywhere near that thing. Our life experiences, how we've experienced that plane before. Could be personal experience, could be something as simple as when you were 3 years old, you were on a plane that had terrible turbulence, scared the living whatever out of you. But you know what? You didn't have the verbal skills to be able to share with your parents that scared you. And now this fun thing of going away on vacation is no longer that fun because your mind is ruminating about, I got to go on that scary thing that could fall out of the sky at any moment. Or interestingly enough, presenting to high school kids today who weren't even alive during 9/11, but they've seen documentaries of 9/11. So their mind goes there when they see a plane. Or in your neck of the woods, they saw the story of Kobe Bryant and a helicopter, unfortunately, falling out of the sky. And so their mind associates something that's up in the air, it can come down. That's why we have the exact same object that can be viewed two different ways. And so the takeaway here, before I go into my personal story, is it's not fair for us to compare life experiences one person to the next. It's not fair for us to compare levels of trauma one person to the next, because I might be scared of chairs. I'm just bringing that term up because I'm sitting on one right now because I tripped over a chair when I was younger. And to anyone else, a chair is the most comfortable thing in the world to sit in. Each of us experience life in our own ways. There's no way to measure that level and how much that, especially as a child, played in our mind over and over and over again. So I mentioned I was going to take you through this story, and I'll run through kind of the early parts pretty quick, which is, this is probably a wall of pictures that most of you have in your house or your parents have in their house. Okay, so this was me. I had this myopic focus when I was younger. Jeannie looks like she's pointing to her wall that she's got hers. So, I was an athlete, and that was my myopic focus, my tunnel vision. I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. I wanted to be a great teammate. I wanted to I was a competitive SOB. I loved diving into it, playing every sport I could. Okay. I graduate high school. I'm fortunate enough to go to Cornell University. Loved my 4 years there, ended up walking on the basketball team. So I get a chance to continue to play my sport, or at least one of my sports, while I'm going to school. Okay, this is awesome. Same tunnel vision. Yes, I've got other things going on, and I got to worry about the schoolwork stuff and getting it done, but my passion is sports. And I'm 6'4" and not 6'8", and I'm athletic, but not very athletic. So I knew I wasn't going to go play anywhere in a major professional way. And so I had to look for opportunities that would be available to me to continue with this passion of sports. And so I'm fortunate enough, when I graduate, I get a job at the NBA league office. The commissioner was a guy named David Stern at the time, and got to go work directly in a department that liaised with him, and got these incredible opportunities. For anyone who's a sports fan, you see on the bottom left there, a guy like Stephon Marbury or Yao Ming, who's sitting next to him, Antoine Walker right next to him in the next picture. Each of these folks that I got to liaise with, and to me, I'm living my dream job. I'm out on the road, I'm meeting with these teams, I'm interacting with players, I'm talking to them about the business side of sports. You know, mentioned before, I got a chance to go work with teams in Chicago. Then from there, it was Phoenix and the Suns and the Mercury. So it was Amari Stoudemire and Steve Nash, and on the women's side, it was Diana Taurasi. Come back to New Jersey to go work with the Devils and the hockey. So I left basketball to go to hockey, got a chance to make a run towards the Stanley Cup. Anyone who's a Kings fan over there, I'm not very happy with you, because the Kings prevented us from winning a ring. So I get that far, you go through the emotional roller coaster, and then it's taken away from you, but still an incredible run. And then end of 2014, beginning of 2015, I get this position with the Florida Panthers. Now, important, you know, when I share these things, is like, how can someone who's listening to this relate to my experiences and put themselves in my shoes? So, okay, for me, it was this corporate ladder, which I look back on and I'm like, was my focus in the right place? But that's where it was at the time. And so in sports, you're trying to move up that ladder and get an opportunity to eventually become the CEO or the president of a team. And so I come down to Florida and I take this position, what's called Chief Revenue Officer. So it's one step away from what my ultimate dream job would be, to run a team. And it was a new ownership group who came in and purchased the team. A guy named Vinny Viola, who's still the owner right now, military background. Okay, this is going to come into play when you guys were talking about who has PTSD. So military background, West Point grad. The CEO he hired, West Point grad also. And then I'm his, I guess, second in charge with him right there. And we come down and we're in Florida, new market, get a chance to really build the organization from the ground up again. They got rid of a lot of the old executives, and it's exciting me. And those smiles that you see, the reason why I'm sharing that excited me is because often in this space we hear, oh, people were wearing a mask. I wasn't wearing a mask. This is how I felt in this moment, end of 2014, beginning of 2015. So you had friends, because you're from the Northeast, to come and bring their kids down. That's the picture on the left. Picture on the right was Halloween of 2014, so leading into 15. And the one joke here is I had to buy that costume because I couldn't make one. And I'm walking up and down Las Olas Boulevards to chants of, that's the largest Woody I've ever seen. So, you know, I give like little ribs there and funny things, because it, you know, that's how I felt. I had this smile on my face. I'm in this new market. Things are going well. And then January into February starts to come around. So I've been there about 5 months now. And these pictures that you see around, that same picture from the last screen, they're representative of different aspects of my life. They're just stock images, but hanging out with friends, I started to lose interest in that. It wasn't as exciting to me anymore. Going to the gym and working out, same thing, almost escaped me, like it vanished. Watching my teams on TV, gone. Playing in my own leagues, the things that I love to do just to get active, no interest in it. The only thing that stuck with me was this focus on being able to work. And back to this idea of putting yourself in my shoes or vice versa, I think most of us can relate to when we've had this tunnel vision focus on something. Okay, so for me, it was first playing sports, and now it's working in sports. Even though those main things in my life that excited me had gone away, the fact that I was able to keep afloat with the one thing I had identified as myself this identity I had as Eric, the sports executive, since that was still clicking and that was still working, I didn't do much about it. So about a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, I'm feeling that way. And then this starts to happen. My brain on the left starts to feel really foggy and no clarity whatsoever. And then on the right, you guys who remember the computers from back in the day, the computers now are too good to do this. But when we used to open up browsers and the browsers would open up to infinity going up to the left, and we would try to close out the browsers with the X, hoping that we would eventually close them out fast enough to get them not have to restart the computer. So at the same time, my brain felt cloudy, but overwhelmed with too much information at the same time. It was this weird juxtaposition of these two things together. And so I wake up one morning and it's like I'm pushing myself at a quicksand to get out of bed. And I get out of bed and I start walking to my closet to go through the motions of the getting ready in the morning routine. And it feels like I have cinder blocks on my feet. And I get into my closet and I open my closet. It looks like a bomb has gone off, even though my stuff is organized because you have a much bigger closet in Florida than you do in New York. They give you much more space there. Everything feels like it's just all over the place and I can't make sense of it. And I remember questioning myself because my brain's not working. I looked at a picture of my nieces. I had them, two most important little people in my life. And I could remember their first names, Rebecca and Kaylee, and I couldn't remember what their middle names were. And it freaked me out, thinking, what is going on here? But I did what I could to put my shirt on, put my pants on. I remember I did not shower that morning. So for those of you who can remember that, you know, or going through it right now, when our routine escapes us and it's not second nature to us, I couldn't do that stuff. So I get into the office, and that's not me on the right, obviously, but that's a picture of what I looked like. I didn't have anyone there documenting it. I'm sitting in the office, at the desk in my office, and the computer screen feels like light brights to me. If you guys remember that old game, instead of being these nice clear lines, everything feels like this. And I'm looking at my staff out there, and instead of saying, okay, this is the season ticket sales staff, this is the group sales staff, this is the corporate partnership staff, it feels like Grand Central Station, like everyone's moving around and I can't figure out where they're going. And so I close my door, someone who enjoys interaction, and I can't make sense of what's going on around me. And that night, we had prospects coming into the building. So I don't know how many of you have been a part of this, but if you get invited to a game by, let's say, a sales rep at a team, and you get to go to like a special area in between, you know, in basketball, it's at halftime. In hockey, in this case, it was between the periods. And usually, okay, the staff would bring those people, and then I would give a speech about the direction that the team is going in to get these fans psyched up about coming to the team. Nothing was coming to my mind. Usually it just comes straight from the heart and it's passion because you're doing it every day. I couldn't think of anything to say. And so I write down on an index card, hi, my name is Eric Hewson. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here with the Florida Panthers. It's great to meet you. And that was it. I couldn't think of anything else. And I actually passed it off to Matt, our CEO. I said, this is Matt. He's going to take it from here. And as that happened, I go back to my office and the game ends. And Matt comes to my office with Vinny, the owner I was talking about before. And they said, Eric, you know, we could tell things are up. Is everything okay? Not in a threatening way at all. Just asking me, is there anything that they can help with? And I said, guys, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if I have a brain tumor. I don't know if I had a traumatic brain injury when I was younger playing sports. I don't know if it's this thing called mental health that people have been talking about, but I'm not being the best employee for you right now. And I'm certainly not being the best human being for myself. Something's not right here. And so Vinny looks me in the eyes, is probably the closest I'll ever get to know what it's like having the camaraderie of folks in the military around you. He says, Eric, we never leave a soldier out in the battlefield. Take as much time as you need, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, come back, hit the ground running. Now, I recognize where we're at in this space still in 2021, 6 years later from this. That's not the case in most offices. So I realized how lucky I was that he was that supportive. But I want you to hear where my mind went. Off the heels of showing what we did learn in school, the sadness, the nervousness, all that stuff, and seeing what we had learned with celebrities, when Vinny said to me 3 months, my mind went to, okay, what else have I seen recently about this mental health stuff that what's it going to take me to get better? And I saw these ads on TV where someone has a sad face and it's usually a cartoon character. They've even dumbed it down to it being a blob with a sad face on it, not even a person. 15 seconds in, that blob or that person is introduced to a pill. And then the last 15 seconds of the commercial, the smile comes back to the face, the sky is blue, the birds are chirping, and everything's great. Now, in fairness, I didn't think it was going to be that easy, but off the heels of taking antibiotics as a child, getting strep throat all the time, bronchitis, pneumonia, parents bring you in. An antibiotic does work like a miracle pill. How nice would it be if the pills that we take worked that quickly? So I didn't think it would be that quick, but that's all I knew in this space was I knew that if I'm not feeling well, I got to find some medication to make me feel better. So I go back to New York. I leave all my stuff in Florida. I don't know how I got back to New York, by the way. Like the level of dysfunction, as you'll see in a second, was beyond. My brother took this picture of me. This was about 3 days into my stay there. You see, there's not even a sheet on the side of the bed. I laid in a twin bed at my size. I'm 6'4", 240. Laid in the twin bed that I grew up in, staring at a ceiling, not watching TV, not listening to the radio, just completely numb to the world. And not doing those things because it didn't even register to me to do them. The only thought going through my mind is, why do I feel like this? Why are no thoughts coming to my brain? Why does it feel like I'm paralyzed? That feeling and being in that position lasted for 2.5 years, laying in that bed. So this is what the world looked like to me. Everything was flat. Everything was gone. There was no lift towards anything. And I spent 99% of my time in that bed. When I say 99% of my time, because the other 1%, I thought I was working my ass off in that bed to stay alive, to keep charging forward, to wait for the next 4 weeks to go by, that if this mix of pills didn't work for me, this next mix would work. And during that time, I tried over 50 different psychotropic drug combinations. So every SSRI, SNRI, MAOI, tricyclic, I probably tried it if you guys have tried it, and none of them worked for me. Not med bashing here, by the way, at all. That's not my agenda. You'll see where I end up with this. But for me, didn't work for me. I go to another doctor. He says, Eric, you got to try TMS therapy, transcranial magnetic stimulation. Helmet put on your head, electromagnetic waves shot in your brain. So I do that. 23 sessions in, he's telling me it's going to take at least 30 sessions to work. I've done 23 sessions in 23 days in a row. Office is open 7 days a week. They tell you to do it as consecutively as you can. On the night of the 23rd, I heard Vic talking about his study with suicide. Love to dive into that deeper with you more, Vic. This is just tangential to this story. Is I can't fall asleep on the night of the 23rd. And on the morning of the 24th, I find myself sitting on my hands on the edge of my bed, and there's a bottle of pills on my counter because my pills were up in my room because I didn't love walking up and down the stairs to go get them. And the only thought running through my head was, swallow that bottle, swallow that bottle, swallow that bottle. I couldn't stop the thought from happening. And I'm sorry for anyone that triggers. I just like to be very genuine and honest with what I was feeling at the time. And I want to share that 2.5 period that I was laying in bed, nothing situationally bad had happened in my family's life. Knock on wood, no one had passed away, no bad breakups, nothing like that. So I somehow developed to this place, laying in that bed for 2.5 years, where now I can't stop these ideations from happening. It scares the crap out of me because it's the first time I've ever felt something like this. And fortunately, since I'm staying with family, I'm able to say, I know I don't want to do this. I've been fighting doing this for 2.5 years, and I can't stop myself from that thought. Please take me somewhere to get help. And at that point, I had to surrender, right? So I go to, I'll leave the name of the hospital out when you hear the experience in a second, but I go to a hospital in New York City. I go through the ER section, which was not a fun experience. And then I'm transferred to their off-campus facility where there's 30 beds on this one floor. And I meet with the attending psychiatrist first day that I'm there. She looks at my chart, looks at me. I look up at her top doctor plaques up on the wall. She says, Eric, you've tried everything there is. So your last resort is to do shock therapy. And I'm sure there's many on this call who are familiar with shock therapy. I want to share that for someone who didn't know mental health at all. I didn't believe they still did shock therapy. But I'll say this. What she said to me, the term shock therapy didn't scare me because I was willing to do anything to feel better at that point. What scared me was hearing last resort. Because as a stubborn SOB who's willing to try anything, hearing last resort made me think like, this is the end. If this doesn't work, I'm done. And so I give into it. I'm wheeled into the ECT suite, 4 practitioners together, 1 person to give the general anesthesia, the propofol, 1 to put the oxygen mask on, 1 to put the electrodes on my head, 1 to put the cuff monitor on. And I'm shocked into seizures. Being told by these doctors, certainly some can question this explanation of the background of ECT and how they tried it with epileptic patients to try and reverse seizures in the past. That didn't work, but it seemed to relieve some of the symptoms. And so they use it as symptoms of depression for folks who are dealing with it. So they use it as a last resort. So now this is the second doctor who's telling me this as I'm getting this treatment. It's a last resort. So I go through 12 sessions over 5 weeks of the shock therapy, and I leave the hospital after those 5 weeks feeling no better than I had laying in that bed for the 2.5 years prior. So I go back to that bed assuming my life is over, unless Merck or Pfizer comes out with some miracle pill that works for me, this person who's in this category called treatment resistant. And you could call treatment resistant and put the label after that of the 15 different labels I've been called up to that point, from treatment resistant depression, treatment resistant anhedonic depression, treatment resistant melancholic depression, treatment resistant ADHD, treatment resistant generalized anxiety disorder. They gave me every single label there was based on the different specialists that I had seen, all having different theories on what had gone on with me. Pictures a little tease right here in terms of the story that I'll dive into from here, is that I mentioned my parents are both educators. So I retreat back to that bed, and they go to these continuing education courses all the time. They're usually on topics like, world hunger or, global climate change, or all these different broad topics. And my mom tells me that her friend has taken her to this course on integrative breathing practices. I had no idea what the term integrative meant at the time, and I'd never done a breathing practice in my life, so it didn't really resonate with me that she was going to an integrative breathing practice course. But she runs back from that class that night, and she says, Eric, I met this wonderful woman, Donna. She's amazing. She treats differently than all these other practitioners that you've met. Please meet her. Please go talk to her. I can't explain what she does, but she'll explain it well. And so 3 days later, I find myself on her couch. She's the first practitioner in 2.5 years where the line of questioning didn't start this way. Eric, what are your symptoms? Okay. Based on your symptoms, here's your diagnosis. Based on your diagnosis, here's how we're going to treat you. That was my experience every step of the way up until that 2.5 years of the 8 different doctors that I tried during that period that tried me on these different psychotropic drug combinations. Donna's first question was instead, Eric, you mind telling me about your life? Very broad like that. And I said, I don't know where to begin. Like my memory feels shot right now. Oh, okay. Tell me about your family. I'm in the middle of 3 boys. We're a sports crazed family. Okay. For the middle of 3 boys, tell me about your older brother. So that picture right there, I'm in the right. That's my older brother on the left. He's 4 years older than I am. And so this is where my mind goes. And I never told the story in this way before because I never thought to tell it this way. But this is just what starts pouring out of me. I'm 8 years old and he's 12 years old. He gets into a sporting accident, cracks his femur bone in half, biggest bone in our body, put in a body cast for a year and homeschooled. Okay, a lot of people get into accidents again, so I didn't think much of it. A month later, after coming out of the body cast, he gets diagnosed with ALL, a children's form of leukemia. So 5 years of chemo, radiation. Back then, the chemo not as strong and not as well targeted. So it takes a full 5 years, but miracle, he goes into remission. A month after going to remission, as if there's a cadence to it, his friend is driving a used Jeep Wrangler that he had just purchased, gotten his permit. They're on their way to a New York Islander game. My brother's sitting in the back seat. They're not supposed to be driving without the parents. Car loses control. No seatbelt in the back. My brother flies out of the back, lands on his head on the Meadowbrook Parkway here, cracks his head open, loses partial vision in his eyes, in ICU for a month. Heals from that, goes to college, feeling a pain in his knee between his junior and senior year, diagnosed with a relapse of the same leukemia he had as a child. So now they want to give him a much stronger chemo regimen. They give him a much stronger chemo regimen, but it starts knocking out the healthy cells in his body just as it is the cancerous cells. And as it's knocking those out, I now go up to school at this point. He's down in Long Island. I get the call from my father that he's developed 105 fever and they have to bring him to the hospital. So I drive down from school to meet them at the hospital, and they tell us that his body's gone into septic shock. Septic shock, where your organs are attacking themselves, leads him into a coma. And the neurologist comes to us that first day and says, listen, we can't see any brain activity. We can't read it. We don't know if he's going to have any. It's your decision how long you want to keep him on the support, but we can't guarantee anything. We don't know if he'd wake and if he would wake, if he would have any brain activity. So that goes on for the first month, second month, third month. End of the third month, miracle again. He wakes and he's got his full cognitive faculties about him. It's like everyone's cheering and dancing. It's the greatest thing in our family at that point. But his kidneys fail from the rigorous septic shock being in that long, has to go on dialysis. We all get tested to see who's the closest match or a donor. His father donates a kidney to him. That all ends. That's my childhood. I get this job at the NBA league office coming out of school. And in that first year, 3 of my close friends that I'd grown up with, separate from one another, obviously, when you hear the way, pass away of heart conditions unexpectedly. One on a treadmill, one alone in his house by himself. And so I'm sharing this story with this woman, Donna, and her response to me back is, Eric, is there anything else that happened in your childhood that impacted your mental health? Now, keep in mind, what I just shared on this slide happened from the ages of 8 to 23. I'm in this woman's office at 35 years old. This doesn't resonate with me that this impacted my mental health, because this is 12 years after that last major thing, I'll call it a thing for right now, had happened to me. And I said, Donna, I said, what do you mean impacted my mental health? These things happen to my brother. They happen to my friends. They didn't happen to me. And she says, Eric, I want you to think about something. If you had a front row seat in the sports world that you work in for a basketball game, and you were watching from that front row seat basketball players run up and down the court, and you're in a suit entertaining a client, and these 7-foot players, they're sweating or they're diving for a loose ball. The sweat hits you or their body hits you as they dive for that loose ball. You're going to go home after 3 hours. You're going to wash that suit, or you're going to put that suit in the hamper for the dry cleaners. You're going to take a shower when you go home at night, and you're going to put on a new suit. You're going to be dressed clean for the next day. Well, now I want you to say that you have that same front row seat. And instead of the game being a basketball game that ends in 3 hours, the game is the game of life. And the game of life is represented by this wrestling match. Your brother is wrestling the game of life, and your friends to stay alive are wrestling the game of life. And it's a muddy wrestling match. And every move they make to try and stay alive against this game of life, they're hitting the mat, and the mat is hitting the mud, and it's splattering on you in that front row seat. So that's represented, be a little grosser if I made that brown instead of green, but that's represented by the green right here. I'm sitting in that front row seat, and what's happened to me is this mud, this effect of what's happening from watching this up close, this mud is caking up on me. And she said something that really resonated with me. She said, Eric, your nose was to the ground. You loved what you did in sports every single day. You were able to tune this all out where you didn't think this would impact you. And eventually that mud caked up on you large enough, heavy enough, and you had neglected it long enough because you didn't know to work on this stuff. It's not your fault. No one taught you those things. We talked about the education of it before. Eventually that stuff gets so heavy, you get taken down. And my immediate reaction to her was, Donna, if you're telling me that that's what mental health is, and that's a big piece of what mental health is, well, then take my story out of the equation. Let's talk about what the average kid deals with. 15 years old. Let's talk about someone 20 years younger than I am. They go through parents breaking up and getting a divorce. They go through parents losing their job and losing the house. They go through their friends getting into fights and breaking up those friendships and seeing great friendships dissolve. They go through their best friends breaking up with their boyfriend or girlfriend and seeing those friends devastated. They go through their friends being verbally abused, hearing about their friends being sexually abused. They go through seeing a friend deal with the loss of loved one, the sickness of a loved one. And I said, that's only part of the list. Think about the stuff that we're going through right now, which is a whole nother piece on the bottom right over here. said that would lead me to believe that if we can experience mental health through us watching the things that happen to other people in our lives, they don't even need to happen to us directly, then whose mental health isn't impacted? Because I don't know a person in this world who hasn't been through one, some, or many of those things, even by the age of 15. And I'm now 20 years later. So this isn't clicking for me. This is not what I've heard in terms of what mental health is. And she says, Eric, I'm an integrative practitioner. I believe the mind and body are connected, and what we experience out in the world impacts that connection in our circuitry. And so I can get more into detail with you, but instead of doing that, let's help you heal first. So she sends me to this breathing course, right? Where I'm thinking of what she shared with me, this stress and trauma buildup. My mind always thinks in analogies and pictures. Okay, if we have plaque that builds up in our arteries over time, it kind of feels like this stress trauma stuff builds up in our system over time, right? Plaque builds up in our circulatory system. Stress and trauma can build up in our central nervous system and then affect all other circuitry in our body. There must be something I need to do to get rid of this stuff that's been building up inside of me. And so I go to this course, this breathing course that she sends me. I'm the only male, only one under 40 at the time, only one born in this country. So it's me and 8 Indian women and 9 yoga mats. I'm wearing a cut sleeve basketball t-shirt and I feel like a fish out of water. But what I learn in this class is probably, a area of the body that you guys go over a lot or learn about a lot is I learned about the vagus nerve. That nerve going from the brainstem all the way down into our stomach, the largest nerve in the body, 2 branches of it, and how when we change how we breathe, think about all the things we experience in life. And I just went through the ones that I had gone through, but any event that you go through, the sickness of someone, the loss of someone, the heightened feelings of the what might happen, we change the way we breathe. If a car crashed through the wall and any of the houses we're sitting in right now had lost control, we do this. We do that all the time without realizing it. And that builds up over time. Yes, I'm talking about things like parasympathetic response, but if you really break down the X's and O's of we experience things over time, and those things change the circuitry, change the way that things function in our body, and you've got this carrier messenger, this vagus nerve in our neck that's vibrating differently, is being tensed up differently based on the way we're feeling, it would make sense that learning how to breathe and doing a routine would loosen, create greater tone in that nerve, and allow your body to say, chill out, Eric. Things are okay right now. Just because bad things have happened in the past doesn't mean bad things are going to continue to happen. And so I did the course with them for 3 days, and I felt no better. But they asked me to stick with it. They said, Eric, we want you to stick with it for 40 days. We'll give you an accountability partner. And what we'll do is we'll track it. But we feel like by 40 days, you're not going to feel great, but we think you're going to feel at least better. And so I didn't do much else because I was convinced that you needed to stay in bed and sleep in order to feel better. But I did this breathing practice for 30 days straight. And on the 30th day, I wake up, 45 minutes a day of doing it. I wake up and I look at my TV, and excuse my language, I said, holy shit. And whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, whether it's first day of Christmas, first night of Hanukkah, or you celebrate something else, or you don't celebrate anything at all, it's just a great day for you. This felt like the greatest day of my life. Because for 2.5 years, I had no interest in anything. And my first thought when I wake up is, holy cow, I want to turn the TV on. I want to know what's on TV right now. And my second thought, you could laugh at me, was I want scrambled eggs for breakfast. So something had clicked where I now started to get interest back. I wasn't back to myself in terms of functional in a true sense to where my emotions were fully back, but at least cognitively and having some drives, things were coming back. And, you look at that child, right? That's what I was in junior high. And you say, well, that doesn't look like someone who's smiling there, who's wearing a mask or faking it. I didn't feel like I was faking it. But this were the time periods, the reason why I chose this age, that's when I'm going back and forth to chemotherapy treatments with my brother, and I'm having to do my homework in the backseat of a car. But we as a society, we don't think this topic applies to us because when we have things that allow us to focus and concentrate on things, we don't think these other things that are around us that happen in our lives impact us. And I'm talking about the group outside of this group and groups like this that talk on an ongoing basis. And so I decide I'm going to share my story, and I'm not a social media person. Even when I'm feeling the slightest bit better, I don't have Instagram, I don't have Twitter. The only thing I had was LinkedIn, because in sports, that's how people stayed in touch. Again, we're talking about 2017, the middle of 2017 at this point. So DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love and all these athletes hadn't shared yet. So I had no idea what format to share in. And the only thing I know, as you could hear, because sometimes I can't shut my mouth, is I know how to write and talk. So I'm writing my story down, and I send it to my friend who's a digital marketer. What do you think? He said, it's excellent, man, but it's 35 minutes to read it. No one's going to read this thing. And he's like, you got to do a video, or you got to put it out there in a shorter way. So I said, all right, I'll meet you in the middle. I'll put my telephone number at the top. And so if people see this is about mental health on a business website, if they don't want to read this whole thing, they don't want to take the time, they'll call me. And so I put it up in May of 2017, and in 3 days, it starts getting shared. And it gets shared over 150,000 times on LinkedIn in 3 days. The bigger thing was I had over 400 calls. It was either the best decision of my life that I put my telephone number on there, or the worst decision, depending on, think of how much it takes to answer those calls back. But over 400 calls from as far as China that I'm tracking in an Excel spreadsheet and erasing my voicemail box so more people can call in and I can take messages. And I'm calling all these people back. And epiphany number 2 for me, an important one, as I was talking with Marie and Ravina and talking about the reasons of why my brain kind of sees this space in maybe a slightly different way, is that I didn't have a single person, and that sounds hyperbolic, but I'm not being hyperbolic. I had shared in my writing that my diagnosis ultimately was chronic PTSD, right? CPTSD, from all the stuff I'd lived through. I didn't have a single person on any of these calls say to me, Eric, I have PTSD also. Or Eric, I have bipolar. It's different than PTSD in this way. Or Eric, I have anxiety. This is how it's different than PTSD. Instead, I had all these people calling me, and maybe it was because I shared what had gone on with my brother that you saw on that previous page, is I had people calling me, sharing with me these lived experiences they had been through. Everything from, Eric, I lost a child to SIDS 5 years ago, sudden infant death syndrome, and I've never been the same, to Eric, I'm the married mother of 2 beautiful children. I love my husband. We've been married for 7 years. I'm 32 years old. We live in the white picket fence, all the financial security we could want. But I broke up with my college boyfriend 10 years ago after we dated all 4 years of college. And when I made that decision at the end of senior year, there was a pit in my stomach because I knew I was changing the course of both of our lives. And that's a pit that's been in my stomach ever since that day. Even with meeting my soulmate, my new husband, I can't get that pit out of my stomach. It's never left me. And I was blown away by these stories, because what the realization was from these stories is that the common thread that ties the human condition together is not disorder, and it's not labels. Disorders and labels are places where we end up potentially, and I'm not denying that it's partially genetics, partially our lived experiences, okay? But what ties us together and makes us all the same is that we all live through challenging events. Even though those events are unique to us, those create a situation where our mental health is impacted. Again, not all to the level of disorder, but our mental health is impacted. And so knowing that, and knowing that I had these contacts in the sports world and had worked with these different athletes, my thought was, I'll go back working into sports if I start feeling better in the next couple of weeks and this continues to go. What organizations are out there that are the big organizations in mental health that I could hopefully use the athletes that I've got relationships with to hand those off to help propel the message of what's getting out there? And please, when I share this, I hope this starts a discussion more than it seems like it's finger pointing. This is someone who is in the category of mental illness, has PTSD, would be considered in that category, if you will. And I so appreciate the way in which Ravina and Marie and Kyle were open to me sharing this message, is that this is the way that my brain processed it at the time. I went to Nami, and I went to Bring Change to Mind, and I went to Mental Health America, and I went to Active Minds, and I went to JED Foundation, and I went to all these large websites, and I said, where's the story about how we're all impacted? What's the message that's getting out there that's helping us all understand proactively working on ourselves, making sure we have resiliency, making sure we do our best as possible not to get to a place of disorder. And here's what instead I saw on the majority of the websites. Now, this goes back to 2017, in fairness, okay? But even in taking some of these messages from some of these websites, some of them local chapters, okay? Some of them mom and pop now websites, here's what I continue to see on the websites. The first is the stat at the beginning, 1 in 5 people are mentally ill. And guys, as a marketer, I get that stat. 43.8 million people in America, that's a lot of people. So we shake people, say, this can happen to anyone. It's 1 in 5, that's 43.8 million people. That's a lot of people. You need to focus on this. Here's the challenge of that message, and I believe it's well-meaning. When I ask that question to a group of people who don't live in this group that we're in, when it's a group of school kids, when it's a group of college kids, when it's a group of fans at a game, and I say, if you're not in the 1 in 5 category, what category are you in? And they say normal, healthy, fine, okay. So they don't believe mental health is a topic for them. We're saying 1 in 5 because we think that's going to shake the trees and shake the masses. But think about this in the context of something other than mental health. I'll tell you from the standpoint of men, when we hear 1 in 7 men are going to develop prostate cancer, my friends, our minds immediately go to, hope I'm one of those 6 out of 7 that doesn't get it. And we don't want to get a prostate exam. We don't want to look into those things. It doesn't sound like it's that large a number. So the first problem was the perpetuation of the 1 in 5. Second issue, this one you could certainly, when I stop, give me some crap about this and say that I'm completely wrong, is all the campaigns were a mirror image of one another. And I get that when we do things that we build off each other, it builds camaraderie, but they were all an action word followed by stigma. So stop the stigma, erase the stigma, break the stigma. Now, in a group of us all talking together, stop the stigma sounds like a great rallying cry. The challenge is, off the heels of the 1 in 5 message, what are we telling the majority of society out there if we're the ones cheering stop the stigma? We might have some of our family members and some of our friends who come along with it, but go off the heels of the lack of education of what's happened in the space of mental health. People don't understand how they're tied to this. So we're saying stop the stigma. The term stigma means there's a group of people forming opinions and judgments, making unfair claims about another group of people. So while that's a rallying cry for us, that's a slap on the wrist to everyone else who's out there. And maybe we feel like we want to slap everyone on the wrist for not waking up and for not being more open to this topic. But you ask a 3-year-old to stop picking up a toy and throwing it, the first thing they do is they pick up a toy and they throw it more. You look at a topic like cancer, my brother, the way that he was treated in the 80s, the late 80s, where people were afraid to go near him, versus the late 90s when he got it, where bringing chocolates and flowers, we forget that cancer was in a similar place where people were afraid of cancer. They didn't want to talk about it. And then this awesome campaign came out. The campaign was everyone knows someone affected. That put us all on the same plane. It could be my neighbor, it could be my brother, it could be my sister. It allowed us to all work on it together. Third and final thing I saw on those websites was celebrity name plus a label plus erratic behavior. Because we didn't have endorsement deals with different celebrities, we were relying on the links from Us Weekly and People Magazine and the way those stories were being told. Well, when the tabloids tell that story, you've seen what's happening with Britney Spears. It's almost coming a 180 right now in a good way that people are realizing this was mental health related. But you saw Britney Spears has depression, shaves her head. Lindsay Lohan has anxiety. She dresses like a hot mess. Kevin Love has anxiety, panic attack, runs off the basketball court in the middle of a game. Kanye West has bipolar, says crazy stuff about his family. So you add these 3 things up right now. 1 in 5 are mentally ill. Let's stop stigmatizing that group of people who are mentally ill, again, in that group over here with you. And the representation for the rest of you, since you don't live with someone who has mental illness, this is what mental health generally looks like. And it's when people shave their heads, run off basketball courts, and have to quit football because they can't play anymore. And I go to these presentations, some of them are voluntary, some of them are mandatory. And when it's not a group that's awesome like you, where it's everyone who's focused on this topic and loves this topic, we got to ask ourselves the question, why are people not raising their hand and saying, I want to learn more about this. I want to go to that event. I want to raise my hand and say, I'm a part of that group. I want to help that group out. Well, these things, when you don't think, faced it yourself, these things are scared. These things can push us away from understanding this topic. And so that was the rationale behind the formation of Same Here as an organization, coming from an American Sign Language perspective, is that the campaign going away from Stop or Stomp or Erase the Stigma, creating those two groups, the stigmatized and those who are doing the stigmatizing, instead saying we all have a story. And whether you're dealing with mental illness on the far end of the spectrum, or you're someone who just lost their father and you're really in a bad place right now and it's difficult to get out of bed, but you haven't been dealing with these symptoms, what we hear all the time of 5 symptoms of this list of 20 for 2 weeks or more, guess what? Same here. You're still part of our group. Your mental health has been impacted because you've been through things in life. And if we could come together around that concept and rally around our stories of the things that we face challenges with, that's a way for us to be able to rally together. And so I share that off the heels of saying, when I started reaching out, Maurice knows how I met Kathy Hurst, the mother of Hayden Hurst, who's in the top left over there, an NFL player who's been talking about his story left and right. Or in the middle screen right there, you have Robin Lerner, who plays goalie in the NHL, or next to him, Shamika Holtzclaw, who probably the best female women's basketball player of all time. What I started asking these folks is, I shared my story much like I did with you on the phone. And I said, this is my story. These are the things that happened to me in my life. I didn't choose for these things to happen. Would you guys be open to forming an alliance of people, not taking away your individual brand messages of all the stuff that you talk about, but tying it together in a way that shares, we all have a Same Here message. We all have a Same Here story because we've all been through challenges. And by the way, if that challenge led to a place of disorder, fine. That's part of our story. And we could be champions. In the case of Robin Lerner, he talks about his bipolar. But what he also shares in a big way is the traumas that he faced growing up as a child in Sweden, and how much that impacted him, and how much that led to how he felt when he was 17, 18 years old, and he started to go towards substances because he didn't know how to handle what he was dealing with. And so forming that led to these opportunities over the last couple of years where, we had brands and organizations start to reach out to us, whether it was Robin wearing the Same Here on his helmet, or, Warner Brothers reaching out with the movie, if you saw The Way Back, to ask us to do screenings with the different athletes or celebrities, talking about how their own personal stories are similar to the story of Jack, the character that Ben Affleck plays in this movie that came out just before COVID started. And what's grown from that is everyday people sending us pictures of the mask at the top is a young woman who plays in a league in Long Island. She's no longer a fan of Robin as a player because he plays for another team, but the message. Goalies over in Sweden on the right, who's getting the message embroidered in their pads, or what's on the bottom left there, which just clicked in, was an NFL player just reaching out. We didn't even know who he was, saying that he wanted to wear the message during the My Cleats, My Cause section of the NFL season. And so, as I kind of wind down here and open up the questions, is what we've been conditioned. When I say we, those of us, I was in that category, even though I was living on this bedrock of trauma, I didn't think I lived in the 1 in 5 group. This is what oftentimes we're told mental health consists of, these disorder labels. And what we don't talk about when it comes to mental health as much is what comes up when these black squares just came up: hurting, foggy, numb, exhausted, stressed, struggling, unhappy. These things that contribute and are pieces of and are symptoms of mental health before disorder ever arises. And so going from this concept of the mentally ill in one group, those of us in this group here, to the mentally well, looking at it instead like it's this continuum. And this is what we've started working directly in schools with, is there isn't the sad kid and the happy kid, the mad kid and the happy kid, the good kid and the bad kid, or adult in this case. There's all of us living across this continuum. And whether we have mental illness or not, when we're going through life challenges, We fluctuate up and down on this continuum. And probably the most important piece of this is there's no middle point in that continuum, because the most common answer to the common question that we give when we do pleasantries with each other is, hey, John and Jeannie, how are you doing? Good, Eric, and you? Good. So the answer is always in the middle. We wanted to take that tool away from these kids, so they had to give us an answer where on that scale, so we could start to get a little bit more conclusive of how is anyone feeling at any given time, and what is that leading towards when we're feeling a certain way over time. And you look at how we represent ourselves. I might be up here, I'm presenting, and my voice sounds deep, and I even after presenting earlier today, I don't feel great, but this is the way that we perceive ourselves. Is we see people walking around and we see the top of a Jenga puzzle, okay? That ugly piece of paper that's covering the second, third, and the bottom of the third Jenga puzzle is purposely there because we only see the chips that were stacked at the top. This is often what most of us are living on top of, this wobbly tower that when we don't fortify it, the things that have gone on in our life, like divorce, job loss, breakups, sicknesses, those are the things that start to take the pieces out of that sturdy tower that's underneath us. And when those pieces get taken away, we start feeling bad from a physical health standpoint. We start eating well, we start going to the gym. But when we don't start feeling well from a mental health standpoint, the majority of society, again, the group outside of this group, they don't pay attention to it. I didn't pay attention to it until I got to the place where I was dysfunctional and I couldn't get around anymore. And when we talk about, I ask a room of people, hey, what are 15 things you could do for your physical health? They name everything that's in a gym: boxing, kickboxing, universal, free weights, swimming, the treadmill, the elliptical, right? And we call those people warriors when they go to the gym. And yet there's all these exercises that we can do for our brain and our brain health, preventative or in the moment. And we're stuck on the majority of society understanding that it's headspace or calm, and that's it. There's one app to do a mindfulness practice or a meditation. And when we see people go to therapy, we're saying they're weak, as opposed to they're just going to the gym for their brain. Like, think about how different it would be if in fixing our brain, this was the way that we were able to fix it. The same way someone could go in arthroscopically in our knee and start to actually fix our knee with tools. If we could do this with our brain, people wouldn't say much about our brain. But because it takes these things like therapy, we don't do that. So what do we turn to instead? The figure that looks like Charlie Sheen on the left. We turn to caffeine and sex and alcohol and prescription drugs and money. And in my case, work. Work was an addiction. It allowed me to not work on my own stuff. Recreational drugs, even sports. Athletes I talk with all the time, they're the first one on the field, the last one off. They're the hardest workers. Question is, what are they avoiding? What are they not working on if they're that nose to the ground in this stuff? So we developed this acronym called STAR, as I finally end up here. STAR stands for Stress and Trauma, Active Release and Rewiring, okay? So putting together this group of practitioners globally who champion these different exercises that we can do as a gym for the brain, the same way that we have a gym for the body. And getting folks to understand, look, we're all at different places genetically, but that's the same thing with physical health. I might put on weight more easily than other people. I might not be as fast as other people. I might have brittle bones compared to other people, but we're accepting that we work on our physical health in similar ways with one another. When it comes to mental health, just because some of us might have been dealt a more difficult hand than others, or have gone through more difficult life challenges than others, to not think of this as a gym that we can use for our brain, medication being one of them. I'm not anti-med, like I said. I take Lexapro, but on top of that medication, or instead of the medication for the people who don't love using medication, what else can we do to fortify, to work on, to release and rewire that stress and trauma from our system so it doesn't build and cake up on us like that mud or like that plaque in the arteries that I was showing before. So we do all these things in school. We have these cards and we do them online where we teach different STAR exercises and we help schools or offices create these gyms for the brain. And I guess the takeaway and what I want to open up discussion with, and I'd so love for anyone to chime in and challenge me, please, if you want, or add in things that you want to share and you want to talk about, is I love what Nami does. I love all your programs. Where I got caught up when I was looking for help after I got to that place was I said, why didn't I know these things were around before? Why didn't I know to work on my mental health before I developed to this place? And again, I might not have been as genetically predisposed. I might not be predisposed to, let's say, bipolar. But if what I know about mental health now is that any of us can get to a place where we're struggling and sinking on a daily basis, and that place can lead to disorder, why are we not more forcefully going out there, number one, to proactively help people before they get to that place? But number two, why aren't we reaching out our hands and saying, if we're actually going to normalize this topic in society, it's going to take us all understanding we're all on the same team doing this, instead of us saying, we're the affected ones, we have it worse than anyone else, you all over there don't have it as bad, you need to stop stigmatizing us, the people who go through it. My opinion on things is you get a lot more participation, you get a lot more people willing to chime in and be a part of it when you make it about storytelling and you make it about the common life challenges that we all face. So with that, sorry I spoke for so long. And again, I usually love these sessions to be way more interactive. It's just so hard to do on Zoom. I don't know if Kyle or Marie or Ravina want to come on, but you tell me from a timing standpoint. I know we went really long here. Is it okay to open up and to be able to do some Q&A? Is that all right to go on?
I think what we could also do is, since we've gone over our time, maybe if folks have any questions, they can send it to me and I can then forward it to you, and then we can send out the answers.
Okay.
If that's okay, because we've gone a little bit over our time.
I missed your message, Ravina. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Now I'm looking right now. If I would have seen that, I could have ended earlier.
Yeah, but
nobody was going to stop you from talking. You have to tell your story.
Yeah. You were on a roll, Eric. That's fine, man. You were on a roll.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing. So powerful.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Ravina, is that good? You wanna if there's questions that come up and we can I'll help answer them that way.
Yeah, and I know it's very late on the East Coast as well, so this must be literally past bedtime for you. But yeah, I mean, your story was so powerful, and I'm sure a lot of people have questions. So feel free to send me an email, and let me just put my email in here. And I'll be happy to share it with Eric and then share the answers to the questions if anybody has that. So let me just share my email.
Ravina, I'm gonna add one thing just because it warms my heart that this happened. We were reached out to by Nami, South Carolina chapter. Same type of thing, local chapter. This was through Hayden's group. So mentioned with you all, it was South Carolina. And just quickly, activation with them, they want to do stuff in schools during sporting events in market in schools. And instead of looking at it like, well, we're NAMI, we do things in schools already, they reached out to Hayden's group, they reached out to my group, and they were like, how do we fill in the gaps with each other, with the things each of us do and the different core competencies that we have, and build programmatically together to be able to provide the best resources for people? And I wanted to end on that because everyone might look at this topic from a slightly different angle, but I really believe if we look at this and if it is 5 and 5, that means there's 7 billion on this planet that need our help. Good luck to any of us who are parts of all these organizations at helping 7 billion people if we actually communicate the right message. Yeah. So I think too often in this space, organizations look at themselves like we're doing the same things. There's competition. I want everyone to know I look at it the opposite way. I've been a part of team sports my whole life. I love doing things in tandem with people instead of being the highlight or the spotlight on it. That's why our organization is front and center and not my name or anything like that. Anything that we can continue to do with you all, other NAMI chapters, other mental health organizations, let's hold hands and do the right things together.
Absolutely. That's great to know. And just before we end, I do want to mention that there's a lot of comments here about how great your presentation was and how enlightening it has been, and very, very powerful too. So I just want to let you know that I've been seeing it in the comments here.
Thank you so much.
So yes, I've given my email in the chat. Please save it, and if you have any questions, please send them to me, and I'll be sure to send it to Eric. So thank you, everyone. And sorry, we went a little bit over our time, but that's good. That's good. I think we really got to hear something so inspiring, Eric. So thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you, Dave, for coming tonight, and congratulations once more. So I'm just gonna say good night.
Congrats, Dave.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Great job. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.